In this video I want to talk about making custom shaders, and this shader is going to be about mixing red, green, blue values to make custom colors inside maybe a sprite or a texture or something like that. So I'm going to start off with a document that's 512 by 512. So you basically go to new, 512, make sure this is set to pixels, and 512. Now this is an important number because it's a power of 2. And a lot of textures tend to be multiples of 512 these days, so they double up from 512 to 1024, and 1024 doubled up is 2048 and 4096. Okay, so we're just going for 512 because we don't need a lot of detail, but the more detail you need, the more size you can have. Okay, I'm going to start basically by filling in this with black, and I'm going to paint with red, pure red, so 25500 on green and blue, and make sure that I'm painting with a solid brush. Okay, so that's going to be like a red zone. Now I'm going to paint with green. I'm going to change this layer mode to additive so that, yeah, I can paint green on black, but if I want to have red and green together, you can see they add up to make yellow. Okay, that's the way light adds up. Not the same as paint pigment, but you can see red and green basically make yellow. Okay, I'll do another layer. I'll change it to add again, and this time I'm going to switch to blue. So 255 on blue, nothing in red. And as I draw in black, it gives me pure blue. If it mixes with green, it gives me cyan. And if it mixes with red, it gives me magenta. And if it mixes with yellow, basically red, green and blue, it gives me white. So you can imagine these three as masks. Black means there's no mask, red means it's a red mask, green mask, and blue a blue mask, and these are combinations. So this is all three. This one's just red and green, this one's blue and green, and this one's red and blue. Now if I merge all these layers together and go into the channels, I can actually see exactly that, these three individual masks, and these masks are going to be used to drive custom color. So if this was a character, you could say that this part could be customized in any color you want, and this, and then anything in between would be mixed. So I'm going to save this out just to show you how that works. So I'll save it as a PNG. Let's call this mask test. Now we're going to be using Unity to make a shader, and I'm using HD render pipeline with Shadergraph imported and installed. So what I want to do is just import the mask. Okay, and I've got a scene here ready for the shader. Now there's no material or shader made just yet, so what I'll do is right click here, and because I've got Shadergraph installed, I can go up to shaders, let's see, shader, and I'm going to go for a PBR graph. Unlit graph is also a good option if you want something just to be basic without any fancy reflective data, but we'll go for PBR graph, and I'll call this custom 4 shader. I call it custom 4 because it's going to change the base color based on the black area, and then we get 3 more colors that we can change. Okay, so just now it's just a shader, it doesn't know anything. We have to open the shader editor to make some new things. Okay. Right, so what I want to do is create a texture 2D. And it's going to hold our mask, RGB, and I'm just going to drag that in, and then drag that off here and type in texture. It's going to be sample texture 2D is what we use here. So basically this is something that the user can now edit, and that would be sampled here and be used. So if I plug this straight into Albedo, and then I save the asset, I'm going to come back to my scene. I'm going to right click on the shader and do create material. So it's going to make a material directly based on that. I'll call this test. And as you can see, it's expecting a texture, just like I asked it to in the node graph. Drag that in there, and I'm dragging material onto this plane, and I can see it's a plane with a little bit of smoothness happening there. Just going to turn the grid off, and otherwise all we can see is our mask. There's nothing else being done yet. So I'll go back into the graph, and I've got access to each of these channels individually, just like I did in Photoshop, where I could look at the channels, red, green and blue. Yeah, they're not red, green and blue, they're grayscale. They're grayscale masks. So if I channel red in here and I save the asset, you'll see that it actually looks different. Let's just drag the scene down here. You can see exactly what's going on. It's taken whatever's in the red channel of the mask. Green channel, save that. I'm going to see something different here. And the blue channel is going to be different again. So these are handy ways of carrying different color information. We can swap these out based on some kind of switch between these, so that we can make some variation really quick just based on one texture. Now I want to use this to drive colors. So there's going to be a base color, right? So I'll go back up here and do color, well, this base color. So everything's going to sit on top of this. I'll just keep the base color as black, bring it in here, and if I plug that straight into Albedo, it now means this texture is not really got any purpose. Save the asset. This all just turns black, because if I look at the material now, even though I do have this property available here and the base color, if I change this, nothing happens because it's not wired up, right? It's not being sent to this output master node here. Okay, so I've got a base color, and I want every other color to be on top of this, and I can change the color here. And yep, that's the only thing it changes, this plane, but there's no change with the texture itself until I plug something in together. So what I'm going to do is create a lerp node. So type in lerp, so right click, create node, type in lerp. And what lerp does is it kind of mixes between A and B based on the value inside T here. So a value of 0 is going to give you whatever's in A, and a value of 1 is going to give you whatever's in B. You can see these values are default, but we can put color information in there as well. So I'll take the base color, I'm going to put that in A as if to say, okay, that's the base, that's the original. And I'm going to take the mask of the red channel, put that into B, and I want to control it, right? So I'll make a new vector 1, and I want to control what's happening between A and B. I want to make it go between the base color and whatever's in this red channel, right? And I'm going to control it with a value. Now these 4 values don't matter, it's just a vector 4 that it's assumed because of these 2 are vector 4s, but really this is just going to be a value that's between 0 and 1. That should always be the case, but it's the way these lerp nodes are designed. So perhaps maybe you can go between each channel with this setup, but I've never used it that way. So I'm going to change this to red mask, Okay, it's going to be the amount of the red mask that's coming through. Plug that in there. Because this is a parameter, when I save this asset, it will come up here. Now let's have a look at this with this plugged in now. Plug that into albedo. So we're going between a base color and this black and white mask based on this value. So if I save this, have a look here. So we've got this red base color, and as I increase the value, we're replacing all of that with whatever's in the mask. Now this should really only go up to 1. You see I can go into minus values and go to crazy big numbers, and it causes a little bit of artifacting. If you want this to stick to 0 to 1, up here where you created the red mask, change the mode to slider with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. Now when I save this asset, and I have a slider that does exactly what I need. Right, but that's not letting me change any colors really. That's just showing me what the mask looks like compared to the base. Okay, so what I want to do is actually multiply the mask with this value. Right, so we're controlling the actual mask, and put this in here, and instead of that node there, we're going to have a custom color. So I'll make another color node, and we'll call this red mask color. And for now I'll just make the default a nice red color. Let's just save the asset first. Okay, let's drag that in. It's just not letting me change the color right now, but let's just drag that in here and see it working. Okay, so the red mask color here is black. The base is this, so wherever there's black in the mask, it's giving us this, and wherever there's red, you can see it's going to be replaced with this, and we can customize this to be any color we want. So I now have a system where from this red, green, blue and black mask here, I can customize the base color and the red channel color, and I can control the amount. Okay, so that's that done. Now the default here, it's not letting me change, but sometimes if you close Shadergraph and open it back up, oh, and it's now down here. Let's just move that up there. Okay, I'm going to put that down to being a small bug. That should let me change the defaults, but there's a bug in that. Okay, so back here I've got mask texture multiplying with this control value. So the mask of red being controlled with this, and that's controlling the lerp. The lerp is basically going between this base color and the red mask color, and the result is channeled to albedo. Now let's say we want to do the same for the green and blue channels. Well, I no longer have to have it plugged in here. I want to do the same kind of thing again. So I'll copy the lerp node. This is going to be the new base. This result is going to be the new base. I want to copy the values here, so the vector 1 and the color, do that for each. So I'll do another vector 1, that's going to be called blue mask. Another color, this will be called blue mask color. Again, it's not letting me choose a default. I'll call this green mask and add color node, green mask color. Now the order here is a little wrong because it doesn't go red, blue, green, it normally goes red, green, blue, but it's easy enough to change. Just move them up like that. Okay, let's save the asset. Now I'm going to drag in the green mask. I'll copy the multiply node and I'll multiply that value so that we have control of whatever's in the mask channel with the mask itself. That's going to be the new controller for the color. Okay, so now I should have control of the base color, the red mask and the green mask. I just have to do it again for the blue mask. So I'll take the result of this using a lerp again, and the A, and this time the blue mask multiplied with whatever's in the blue channel of the actual texture mask. So we've got control of it. That's going to go into T for control, and then we take the blue mask color and put that into B, because that's what's going to result based on this T value. And then this can go into albedo. And that's pretty much it. So I'll save the asset, go back to the scene, let's choose the material. You can see I've got red mask, green mask. They're yet to be turned into sliders, but I can see that I can bring them in. Yeah, I get very odd effects when I go more than one. But if I change these into sliders, 0 to 1, 0 to 1, and save. Just make sure I just slide them about a bit to see them. So now I can customize all three colors. There we go, we've got a base color, red color, green mask and blue, and we've got control of each of those. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a proper little bit of art for this. And I'm just thinking about the best way to go about this, because normally when you paint something, you want to be painting already knowing that you can paint it with the colours that you want. And the best way to paint then is in grayscale, or at least some sort of tonal scale, and we can think about the hue shift later. Let's say I wanted to make some blades of grass. So I've just made this layer here, this black layer as our background. I'm just going to paint as if I was painting some blades of grass. Okay, maybe there's going to be bits down like that. Right, there's not much happening in this little clump of grass just yet. So I'm painting green, which is the closest to the actual grass colour. Right. Okay, something like that. It's not the best art in the world, but there we go, there's a little bit of grass there. And let's say I want to make it so that I can customize a couple of tones here. Now I've got the base colour, this black tone here. So I can customize that, and I guess I could fade this, but then I'm still seeing the background. That's if you're doing like a cutout effect for foliage, but let's just say this is just a picture that we want to change for now. Right, what I can do actually is to lock the pixels. switch to red. So if I'm working in pure green and I move to like red here and start to paint over, let's use a soft brush, right? Really soft brush and low opacity. And I can start to paint in some red at the bottom here. Now bear in mind that I can customize this color later. Right, I can also choose blue and maybe paint this one a little bit, maybe some of the tips. And I don't know if you can see where this is going, but basically I can decide what I want blue to be later. So if I can draw in some little blue bits like this, they don't look like anything here, but later I can make these like highlights. Okay, something like that. So I'm going to save this image. I'll just save over the mask test, right? And let's actually overwrite the file inside Unity. Okay, so I've overwrote the file through Windows so that when I come back into Unity that simply updates. Now I'm going to go back to the material. You can see I've got this, and as soon as I start bringing in the masks, I've got something quite unique now. Now I'm just going to turn off the specular amount. Smoothness I'm going to put down to 0 and save that so that we don't get this sheen here. Okay, and you can see basically we're getting these green highlights because of the blue mask. Can make them white, and the green mask we can choose to have a different color. And basically I can now customize the entire color of this image. Some bits I can have fade out completely. Okay, now there is a little bit of compression happening in the texture, so you might want to go back to that. I'm just going to select the texture here. Okay, select the texture and turn off the compression, and that will fix a few things. Okay. Now also, when I painted here, there's some sort of fade at the edge because I didn't paint in additive mode. So I'm going to go back in here and make sure that when I paint this, I've got that in mind. So I'll take that layer away. I'm going to do a new layer. I'm going to paint in red, so pure red, 255. Let's see if I can make a better looking. Okay, not the best looking plant, but you get the idea that you can make pretty much whatever you want this way. So that is going to be the red channel, and what I want to do is make a new layer and turn it into a clipping mask, change the layer to additive, and then work in green. And I can think of this as kind of like my highlights. So 255 green, I'll just put my opacity down a good bit and just paint some nice highlights like that. Well, not so much highlights, more like a gradient tone for a general brighter area. And then make a new layer, make sure it's also set to clipping mask, change it to additive, and I'm going to paint in blue. It's not easy to imagine what's happening here, but as soon as I start painting in blue, it will just show up a brighter colour, hopefully. So I've changed that to add. I'm now in pure blue, 255, and I'll just add that to the edges. And you can barely see it here, but I'm getting something like a little highlight, like that. And I can even add some other bits. Put the opacity right up, let's add that there. And the reason it's not drawing here is because it's clipped. If I want to draw more stuff, just make sure I do a new layer, change it to additive, and then I can add more bits. So these bits here can be based on the highlight color. Okay, I'm going to save that. And let me just locate exactly where this is. So if I right click here and do Show in Explorer, copy this whole address back into Photoshop, and then when I save as PNG, just going to paste the address in there and then just overwrite directly. Okay, now when I come back, it's overwrote that. You can see it's already adopted the 3 colours that I've gave it. It's changing the highlights as well as these, so some things you have to be careful with, but you can see from that we can customize anything with a texture as long as you use that masking system. So if you don't want any changes, you change the base to black. The red channel gets this first color, the green channel gets the second one, and the blue channel gets the kind of highlights that I made there. Let's say we want to cut this out so that it is kind of like a bit of foliage. We need to go back to the shader for this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up the masks so that anything contained in each of these basically becomes part of the overall opacity mask, but I will control it with these values as well. So I can kind of use the results here. We've got the mask being multiplied by this. So let's use the results from the multiplies. Just move them here to make it easier. And what I'll do is I'll add these up. So you want to right click and do create node, add. So think of it, I'm just adding up the result of the mask controlled by the slider that we use to see the mask. So if I add these up, add, and because I can't add a third node here, I just have to do another add node. Okay, let's close that up to make it easier. Take the result from that and add the result of this one, and basically now we've got all 3 masks based on the control slider and the information in the mask texture. Adding all those up, I just want to make sure that it's clamped as well, that doesn't go over a value of 1, just to avoid any artifacts. So right click and do create node and type in clamp and just put that in there. That will just keep everything between the black and white zone, and I'm going to drag that into alpha. Okay, and I'll save that, and hopefully we get the background clipping out. Now it doesn't happen right away until I tell it what kind of texture to be. So we've got our opaque and transparent mode. Now transparent will work, but we will get some issues with that later when things are layered up. Okay, so that's working fine, but you'll get some kind of transparency sorting issues. So I recommend going for opaque, but having a kind of cutout effect. Now there should be a cutout effect somewhere here. Got our alpha clip threshold. Perhaps this is what we need. So I'm just going to create a new vector 1 and call it alpha clip, and the default would be 0.5. and change the mode to a slider and drag that in and use that there, right? And that should work. It's not soft transparency, but as you can see, it's just a little bit rougher around the edges. You can see we can control that here, and all of that is also controlled with these intensities. So I'm taking the highlight away, but I'm also taking away these, right? And because the base holds most of it, but some of these colors can come through, you can get some interesting effects. You might want to color things a certain way so that this effect is stronger, but I think that's looking pretty cool. Now another thing you want to do is enable two-sided for something like that, so that if you look at it and you're seen from the other side, as soon as we save that, it means that we'll see the other side of it. Now the only thing is it's affected by light, right? There's a dark side and a light side because of the light source, so maybe you want to control that as well. So this only goes into the albedo, just the base color based on light, but emission will override that and basically give it a glow effect. So we're going to do a multiply node, create node multiply, take the result of the color information. It's getting a little bit cluttered here, sorry about this. Okay, so we take the result of all this color information, all this sort of mixing between the masks and the controls. So we're multiplying the masks as a value to say whether we want it or not. That is in turn controlling this lerp between a base color and whatever color we choose the red mask to be. The result of that then becomes like a new base, right? So that goes into A. Then we're using the green channel to mask and so on. Eventually we end up with the color information here, and we've got this clipping thing happening as well. Okay, so I basically want to add some emission to it, so I'm going to add a vector 1 and call this emissive, and I'll put a default value in of 0.2 just for a little bit of emissiveness, and I'll change that to a slider. I'll let it go up to 2 just in case we want something to really kick, and eventually it would end up getting into post-process and affecting the bloom a little bit more. Okay, so I'll drag that in. So I'm going to multiply the color with this, and that is now going to go into emission so that we've got some control of the emissiveness. I'm going to save that asset, and now if we look at the underside, we can see it's got a little bit of color to it. Go back to the material and you can see I can control that. Let's prop it upright. Change this to 90, 0, duplicate the asset and rotate, scale it down a bit, move it down, duplicate the asset, rotate it again, Let's scale it kind of up on the y-axis a little. Let's move it about and duplicate it one more time. And there you have a kind of grass asset that you can use in the scene. Maybe it's a bit of coral or something like that. I can basically now customize this loads of ways. Imagine you had a script controlling this mask here to make it glow. Got the little highlight in there, the alpha clip value, the emissive power. And actually the best bit of this is being able to customize the colors. We've got a nice kind of fiery effect. Change the green mask. Even have it going black. Okay, it doesn't go black. And I guess that is because we're not actually replacing the color so much, or the emissive is, yeah, the emissives overtook it a little bit. You can change these to black. And if you really zoom up, you can kind of see that highlight there. If I change this, you can see how that changes. The base color is just the edge. You might get a little glowy effect like that, which is quite nice. And you can control that with the alpha clip because it's kind of like an outline. If you stay just above 0, then you can use this as a kind of outline effect. That adds even nicer sort of look to it. And there you go, you can now duplicate these around and make up a whole scene. Scale them down. That background color really does have a strong effect on all of this. Ooh, almost wintry. You can pretty much do anything you want here. You see, as I bring in the red mask, it does help replace a bit more. It's that strong you can even see the dots from the brush strokes, which is actually quite a nice kind of alien looking effect. Play with that alpha clip, really bring that up. Change the emissive value. And there you go, that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Hope you like using this kind of system for customizing assets. You can easily duplicate your material and apply it to a whole bunch. So if I choose all these ones, for example, and choose to change that material to this one. I can go ahead and make even more variation. And it's all down to this mask as well, so however you choose to create this mask will also affect things. So what it basically does is it swaps out red, green and blue channels for new colors, and also the base color, which is the black base color. So anything where you don't put something gets this, and it's affecting the edges because there's nothing there, and the alpha clip will really show that. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoy using Shadergraph and make some really cool assets, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.